They sold you a myth of honor, of glory, of 300 fearless warriors standing against an empire, but the legend of the ancient Spartans hides something darker. What if everything you thought you knew about Sparta was a lie? Behind the bronze and bravado was a society fueled by fear, ruled by force, and destined to collapse. This is not the Sparta of glory. This is the Sparta of control. It was built on fear, fear of slaves rising, fear of children failing, fear of showing weakness, even fear of themselves. Would you raise your child in a world where emotion was a weakness and silence was survival? Behind the mask of discipline was a system obsessed with control, not just social control, but domination over bodies, thoughts, and futures. Sparta wasn't a land of brave warriors, it was a state of constant terror. You might think you know Sparta, the ancient world's warrior elite. But this is Sparta explained through reality, not myth. We draw from Plutarch, a Greek moralist, Xenophon, a soldier historian, and modern archaeology to bring you Sparta history explained, raw, debated, and unsanitized. Tonight, we strip away the legend of the 300 to reveal the fear-driven system behind Sparta. From the brutal training of its boys to the oppression of its enslaved population, the strict control over daily life, and its clash with Athens, we uncover how Sparta built power on fear, not freedom. Let us begin. Breeding monsters inside the brutal Spartan agoge. Before a Spartan boy ever held a spear, he was forced to survive something far worse than battle. The enemy came early, and it wore no foreign armor. It wore the face of his own society. At 7, every Spartan boy was taken, not for school, but for transformation. The state called it the agoge. This was the core of the Spartan education system, but it wasn't education. It was erasure, a crucible to burn away weakness and sculpt obedience through pain, to turn children into weapons. Picture it, a boy clutching his mother's tunic, separated from his mother and handed to men who no longer remembered softness. No goodbye, no comfort, only silence. The first lesson, love is weakness. Historical records show the youth conditioning program was built on fear, hunger, and pain. Boys were starved to make them steal, then beaten, not for stealing, but for getting caught. Cleverness served the state. Compassion was a threat. Older boys beat younger ones publicly, not as punishment, but as ritual. Pain was a spectacle. Survival meant silence. Crying made you a target. Mercy made you weak. There are stories, grim, persistent stories of boys dying under the lash during endurance competitions. One boy, according to Plutarch, was fatally injured during harsh training for refusing to cry out. His silence won praise. His death? Irrelevant. Sparta didn't want boys. It wanted silence wrapped in muscle. If a child showed weakness, they might not survive to see the military education. Some accounts say unfit infants were left on Mount Taygetus to die. Myth or not, the message was clear. Sparta valued purity over life. The weak were discarded. Strength wasn't earned, it was selected. This was the daily life of a Spartan child. But what kind of strength kills emotion? Tears children from their parents, reduces worth to blind obedience. In the Spartan boot camp, there was no self, only the state. Boys weren't shaped to think. They were conditioned to obey. This was not childhood. It was manufacturing. And the product? Human beings so deeply conditioned that they didn't just follow orders, they internalized them. They believed their worth was measured in pain, silence, and loyalty. Modern scholars debate whether the military education forged warriors or broke them, but to Sparta, it didn't matter. The goal wasn't wisdom or growth, it was control through fear. Those who failed to conform, they disappeared, quietly, permanently. Because in Sparta, strength meant silence, And if a society must subject its own children to extreme discipline to survive, was it ever strong at all? But Sparta's cruelty didn't end with its children. It extended deeper, into the shadows of its fields, where another group endured something even worse. If this chapter challenged what you thought you knew about Sparta, I hope you'll stay with me. These stories aren't just about the past. They reveal the systems, values, and fears that still echo today. I make these videos to look beyond the legend and ask what it really cost to create a society like this. Please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It helps bring more of these deeper, uncomfortable histories to light and reminds the algorithm that nuance still matters. The nightmare state, living as a helot under Spartan rule. We've seen what Sparta did to its sons. Now imagine what it did to its slaves. The helots were a native population placed under strict control by the Spartan state, primarily in the region of Messenia. They weren't simply laborers. They formed a large, oppressed class whose work sustained the Spartan economy, all while living under heavy surveillance and social restrictions. They made up the majority of the population. They farmed the land, cooked the food, raised the children, built the economy, and they were treated not as people, but as a threat, an infestation, a problem to be managed through terror. Sparta didn't conquer to expand its culture. It conquered to enslave. The fertile lands of Messenia were seized, their native people reduced to permanent subjugation. These were not servants, they were property, inherited, traded, and hunted. Yes, hunted. Every autumn, Sparta declared war on the Helots, formally, legally. It wasn't metaphor. It was a license to kill without consequence. Helots weren't citizens, not even enemies. They were tools. And when tools begin to think, to resist, you don't negotiate, you eliminate. Enter the Krypteia, Sparta's secret police. Recruited from the most brutalized graduates of the Spartan training system, these young men were sent out, alone, at night, with knives and no orders except this: disappear into the darkness and instill fear. Sources describe them slipping into Helot villages under moonless skies, choosing targets: the strong, the defiant, the hopeful, and killing them. No warning, no trial, just disappeared without warning. Imagine that. Living your life knowing your children were watched, that your strength looked like rebellion, that surviving too well could mean death. What was life like in Sparta if you were a Helot? You rose before dawn to farm land you didn't own. This was the daily life if you were born into chains. Most of your yield went to masters who called you lazy. No weapons, no travel, no Spartan dress, no Spartan speech. You were mocked, paraded, humiliated, proof of failure. And at any moment you could vanish. This wasn't just labor, it was extreme behavioral conditioning. A system built to kill hope and rule through fear, surveillance, and spectacle. Yet the Helots resisted. Again and again. Proof that even the crushed can dream of freedom, and that Sparta's core always trembled one revolt from collapse. Because here's the truth, Sparta's warriors didn't just defend the city from foreign enemies, they existed to control their own population. Ask yourself, what kind of empire needs an entire caste of disposable humans just to function? What kind of strength must kill in secret to survive? What is Sparta, if not a machine fueled by human misery? Next, we look even deeper, not just at the people who were enslaved, but at those who were caught in the system in other ways. In the next chapter, we'll see how even the Spartans who were considered free lived under strict and relentless control. Let's keep going. No escape, the crushing weight of Spartan conformity. By now you've seen how Sparta treated its slaves, how it broke its children. But what about the so-called citizens, the elite warrior class, the men who were considered to be free? They weren't, not really, because in Sparta, even freedom was a performance. And behind the ritual, the rank, the armor, was a cage, a reflection of Spartan society itself. Spartan life was total control. Every action, every thought watched and shaped by the state. Stepping outside the rules meant social death, or worse. There was no privacy, no individuality. Meals were mandatory, housing uniform, wealth equalized, not from compassion, but to kill envy. Owning things was discouraged, opinions dangerous, even speech was controlled, short, sharp, obedient. You didn't choose your life. At 7, the Spartan training system took you. At 20, you joined the military mess. At 30, you could live with your wife, but the state still came first. Marriage was function, not love. Children weren't individuals, they were future soldiers. If your son failed the military education, your status collapsed. Marriage was a function, not a union. Love was irrelevant. Children were evaluated not as individuals, but as future soldiers. And if you deviated, refused training, questioned rules, showed dissent, you became a trembler, a coward shamed by society, stripped of honor, banned from marriage, shunned in public, silenced without force. In Sparta, exile wasn't always physical, it was social, and it was devastating. Even death was ritualized. A Spartan man who died in battle received a marked grave. One who died of illness, accident, or age was buried in anonymity. You mattered only in how you served. And the irony is that the cost of this conformity was enormous. Historical analysis reveals that by the 4th century BCE, Sparta's population of full citizens had plummeted to a dangerous low. The system was so demanding, so selective, so obsessed with purity and discipline that it shrank itself, it consumed its own future. And when crisis came, when Sparta needed men, it found itself hollow. Think about that. A society so afraid of weakness, so allergic to diversity, that it bred itself into extinction. Ask yourself, what is freedom if you cannot speak your mind, if you cannot choose your path, if you live every day performing a role you didn't write under threat of erasure? This wasn't strength, it was a performance, a mask worn for survival, and beneath it, a citizenry suffocating in silence. Next, we turn our focus to the other half of Sparta's society, its women. Were they truly empowered, as often claimed, or were they simply another gear in the fear machine? Let's uncover the reality behind the myth of Spartan female freedom. Spartan women, power brokers or prize breeding stock. They tell a different kind of myth about Spartan women, that they were strong, independent, free, that unlike other Greek women, they exercised, owned land, gave biting speeches, and ran their households with authority. That while Athenian women were locked away, Spartan women stood tall, liberated. But freedom in Sparta was never free. And for women, it came with a chilling condition. You exist to produce soldiers. That was your purpose, your worth, your duty. You could speak, inherit, move, but only to serve Sparta's war machine. Everything came down to one cold equation. More boys meant more soldiers. From girlhood, you trained not for glory, but for childbirth. Your body wasn't your own. Your strength existed only to produce more soldiers. Love, softness, choice, those were luxuries Sparta never afforded you. You ran, wrestled, threw javelins, not as athletes but as state-monitored breeders. Marriage wasn't yours to choose. You could be assigned an older man for his lineage or loaned out to make better offspring. Even infidelity was allowed, if it produced warriors. This wasn't empowerment. It was selective breeding framed as patriotism. Historical records suggest Spartan women had high status, but status means nothing when your body is property, when your womb is a weapon, when your function is more important than your will. And if you didn't or couldn't fulfill that function, you became invisible. A woman who didn't bear sons was viewed as a failure, a burden. She had no role in Sparta's sacred script, no use to the system. In a society obsessed with military output, even your fertility was audited. And what about emotion, about love? There's almost no record of it. Spartan women and men were often separated for years. Intimacy was structured around utility. Families weren't built on bonds, they were assigned, calculated, expected to yield results. Yes, Spartan women could speak boldly, but only because the men were at war or preparing for it. Their visibility wasn't a sign of equality. It was a vacancy, a necessity, a role to be filled until Sparta's boys returned, if they returned. Ask yourself, is a voice truly free if it only echoes what the state demands? So were Spartan women roles truly powerful? Perhaps. But they were never sovereign. They were respected only in how they served the system. And the system, like all others in Sparta, was built not on freedom, but function, not on rights, but roles. And when the state no longer had use for you, it simply forgot you. Next, we step behind the curtain of power. Who really ruled Sparta? The kings, the elders, or someone else entirely? Kings, councils, and whispers. Who really ruled Sparta? 2 kings, 5 ephors, a council, an assembly. It looked like balance, but it was paranoia in law. The Spartan government mixed monarchy, oligarchy, and democracy, not to share power, but to stop anyone from holding too much, not even the kings. Yes, Sparta had 2 Spartan kings, sacred in name, shackled in practice. They led armies but could be overruled. They wore crowns, but could be tried, exiled, even executed. Imagine that, ruled by fear even at the top. Why? Because Sparta feared concentration of power almost as much as it feared rebellion. So, who really ruled? Enter the ephors, 5 men elected annually, with the authority to check the kings, control foreign policy, oversee education, and even command the secret police. They were not figureheads, they were watchers, and they only served 1 year because too much time in power was considered dangerous. But what does that create? A government built not on vision, but on vigilance. Everyone watching everyone. The Gerousia, Sparta's elder council, was just more control. Respected, yes, but meant to block change and unpredictability. This wasn't politics, it was containment. Spartan leadership mirrored its society, rigid, suspicious, unchanging. No room for innovation, no charisma, no bold ideas, just functionaries, enforcers, whisperers in the dark. And beneath them, the appeller, the citizen assembly. All Spartan men over 30 could vote, in theory, but power was limited. No debate, no discussion, just obedience by shouting. A government built not to solve problems, but to bury them. Because every level of power in Sparta operated under the same unspoken mantra: control the people, control the helots, control the kings, control the self, and above all, never trust too much. So ask yourself, how stable is a state where every mechanism of government exists to prevent ambition? How strong is a kingdom where the kings fear their own ministers? Power in Sparta wasn't about leadership. It was about surveillance, about stifling possibility. And that's not governance, that's infrastructure for fear. Next, we return to the battlefield, not to relive glory, but to deconstruct it. In the next chapter, we strip away the legend of the 300 and reveal what really happened in Sparta's most famous hour. The truth about Thermopylae, beyond the Hollywood heroics. You've heard this story before. 300 Spartans, a narrow pass, 1 million Persians, a last stand for freedom, honor, and the Western world. It's cinematic, it's iconic, it's not the truth. Because the Battle of Thermopylae wasn't a tale of selfless sacrifice. It was a calculated delay, a display of state-driven survivalism. And the Spartans, they weren't alone. Nearly 7,000 Greeks held Thermopylae. Spartans, yes, but also Thespians, Thebans, and others. When Leonidas made his final stand, about 1,000 remained. The Thespians stayed and died, but their story was buried. Sparta understood the power of myth. By spotlighting only Spartan sacrifice, they turned a military defeat into political legend, masking deeper fears, the Persian threat, Greek disunity, and the need to remind all of Greece who led the resistance. But look closer at the context, and the cracks begin to show. Leonidas wasn't sent to stop Xerxes, only to delay him. The real defense was further south. Thermopylae was a message, a spectacle, and Sparta made sure it was remembered their way. Even in death, they controlled the narrative. Here's the darker truth. They almost didn't show up. The battle clashed with the Carnaia, a sacred festival. Sparta delayed for days, choosing ritual over urgency. Leonidas was sent ahead with a token force, a compromise between faith and fear. So ask yourself, what kind of society values ritual over survival? And what kind of culture turns a calculated delay into eternal legend while silencing the allies who bled beside them? Thermopylae wasn't just a battle, it was theater, a story built to last, not for truth, but for usefulness. It boosted morale, masked failure, and hid a deeper reality. Sparta wasn't invincible. It was afraid. The Persians broke through, Greece burned, the war raged on. Sparta didn't survive through heroism, but through alliances, politics, and strategy. But the myth, that stayed. And today, we still whisper about the 300. But this is the truth about the 300 Spartans. Still revere their sacrifice, still believe the legend. While the truth, like so much in Spartan history, lies buried beneath the bodies that didn't make it into the story. But that was just the overture. Because what came next wasn't just a clash of soldiers, but of entire worldviews. Democracy versus discipline. When Athens met Sparta's iron fist. One prized freedom, the other demanded control. Athens was chaos, debate, drama, flawed brilliance. Sparta was silence, order, obedience, iron unity. Their war wasn't just for land. It was a battle for the soul of civilization, the defining clash of Sparta versus Athens. The Peloponnesian War, which tore the Greek world apart for nearly 30 years, was more than a military struggle. It was a battle for the soul of civilization, and at its core, it asked a question still burning today. Do we value freedom, even if it's messy, or order, even if it costs our humanity? Athens was loud, arrogant, and experimental. It gave birth to democracy, messy and limited, yes, but revolutionary. It empowered its citizens to question, vote, accuse, defend. It made art, philosophy, science. It also made mistakes, deadly ones. Mob rule, imperial overreach, corruption. Sparta saw this and recoiled. To the Spartans, Athenian freedom was decay, softness, a disease. They despised how Athens embraced foreigners, empowered artists, elevated women in theatre and thought, things that in Sparta would be signs of rot. And Athens, they mocked Sparta's silence, its brutality, its obsession with war and rejection of beauty. To them, Sparta was not noble, it was barbaric, just in a different uniform. When war finally came, it wasn't swift. It was long, grinding, cruel. The Peloponnesian War consumed an entire generation. Plague tore through Athens. Betrayals fractured alliances. Fortunes reversed again and again. And in the end, Sparta won. But it was a hollow victory. Sparta had broken the world to impose its order, but had no idea how to rebuild it. It lacked the infrastructure, the diplomacy, even the interest in empire. It ruled briefly and badly, and within decades Sparta's dominance collapsed. It had won the war, but lost the future. Athens, for all its failures, left a legacy that would echo across continents. Sparta left a myth. But here's what haunts us. That myth still has power. Even today, we argue the same battle, freedom or control, chaos or discipline, individual rights or collective order. Ask yourself, in a time of uncertainty, which do we seek? The messy debate of Athens or the cold security of Sparta? And what do we become when we choose the latter? If this exploration of Sparta's war with Athens shook your idea of strength and freedom, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. I put my heart into unearthing the uncomfortable truths behind these myths. And if you're drawn to the shadows of history the way I am, you'll want to stick around. There's more to uncover, more to question, and more stories that challenge what we think we know. Let's keep digging, together. Next, we go deeper, not into battle, but into decay. Let's watch the machine collapse from the inside. The rot within, how Sparta's fear devoured itself. Sparta beat Athens, but it couldn't beat itself. A system built on fear always turns inward, and Sparta, paranoid, rigid, unyielding, began to crack long before any enemy crossed its borders. At its peak, Sparta ruled the Peloponnese, yet by the 4th century BCE, fewer than 1,000 full citizens remained, 1,000 men to uphold an empire. Why? Because obsession with purity became a death sentence. Citizenship wasn't earned, it was inherited. No flexibility, no reform. Even the Spartan training system thinned their own ranks, discarding boys who didn't survive it. They built perfect warriors, but forgot to build a future. And the Helots? Still there, still watching, still waiting. With every Spartan death, the ratio shifted and fear grew. Sparta responded the only way it knew how, with more control, more laws, no change. They refused new tactics, rejected innovation, clung to tradition like a man gripping a rusting sword. In the end, Sparta didn't collapse from invasion. It collapsed from within, because it feared reform more than ruin. And in a world that changes, rigidity is fatal. Next, we reach the end, the collapse, the silence after the drums. We witness the final unraveling of a civilization consumed by its own mythology. Ghosts of the Peloponnese, the inevitable fall of the Spartan Empire. Sparta was feared, but fear is not loyalty. And when fear fades, all that's left is resentment. After the Peloponnesian War, Sparta stood alone, victorious, feared, and brittle. Its empire wasn't built to last, it was built to control. And control breeds enemies. Sparta ruled with force, installing puppet regimes backed by garrisons. Where Athens used trade and persuasion, Sparta used fear. It backfired. Former allies, Thebes, Corinth, Argos, turned against it. The Helots grew bolder. Admiration turned to resentment. Sparta wasn't respected. It was alone. Then came the breaking point, Leuctra, 371 BCE, a name few remember, a battle that shattered the myth. Thebes, once a secondary power, marched out with a revolutionary strategy, an oblique phalanx, deeper ranks, smarter positioning, exposing the secrets of Spartan warfare. Sparta, still clinging to outdated tactics and the illusion of invincibility, charged in and lost. Sparta lost, decisively, publicly, permanently. The invincible hoplite elite was broken. Their king, Cleombrotus, lay dead, and with him died the illusion of Spartan superiority. In the years that followed, Thebes invaded the Peloponnese, freed Messenia, liberated the Helots. Imagine it, a population enslaved for centuries, suddenly unshackled. The economic backbone of Sparta ripped away. The Spartan state collapsed inward. No more helot labor, no more food, no more wealth. The citizen population, already dwindling, spiraled into nothing. Sparta, once the terror of Greece, became a backwater. It was no longer feared, it was pitied, and yet it lingered. The city remained. But the spirit that had animated it, the iron discipline, the calculated brutality, the cold coherence, was gone. The world had moved on. Sparta had not. It couldn't. Its system had no room for reinvention. It had no space for healing, no capacity for redefinition. It had burned too many bridges, buried too much flexibility, built too much of its identity on not changing. So it remained, silent, dusty, revered by some, forgotten by most, a ghost on the map of history. Ask yourself, how strong is a civilization if it cannot adapt, if it cannot grow beyond its fear? The fall of Spartan Empire didn't come in fire or glory. Sparta withered, starved by the very system that once made it powerful. And in the end, it left us something far more dangerous than Spartan alliances and enemies. It left us its myth. And that myth still lives in our politics, in our culture, in our darkest instincts. In the next chapter, we ask the most important question of all. Why do we keep coming back to Sparta? And what does that say about us? Echoes of fear, why Sparta's ghost still haunts us. Sparta is gone, its walls crumbled, its warriors dust, its discipline forgotten. And yet we remember, not the helots, not the broken children. We remember the 300, the strength, the order, the myth. But why? Why do we idolize a society built on control while claiming to love freedom? Because Sparta offers something seductive, the promise that strength comes from unity. That disorder can be conquered by discipline. That fear can be harnessed for safety. That complexity, humanity, can be streamlined into something simple, efficient, controlled. In times of chaos, that sounds comforting. And so we invoke Sparta, in speeches, in slogans, in policy. We cite it when we want stricter schools, harsher policing, tighter borders, greater obedience, less debate, less doubt. We don't quote Athens when we feel threatened. We quote Sparta. But here's what we forget. Sparta didn't survive its own ideals. Its system didn't collapse because it was weak. It collapsed because it was afraid of weakness, because it prioritized obedience over innovation, survival over compassion, and silence over truth. And yet we keep reaching for it, not as historians, but as believers. We resurrect its myth when we fear losing control, when we long for order, when we'd rather be safe than free. But Sparta's ghost doesn't protect us. It warns us. It reminds us what happens when a society trades freedom for fear, when it mistakes conformity for strength, when it sacrifices the human spirit on the altar of security. So ask yourself, when you admire Sparta, what part of yourself is speaking? The one that longs for courage, or the one that fears uncertainty? Because Sparta is not just a place in the past. It's a question, one we keep answering again and again, in every era, in every system, in every silent compromise. And until we face it, truly face it, we'll keep repeating it, not as history, but as prophecy. If this exploration of Sparta has made you rethink the myths we're taught about power and civilization, then there's another story you need to hear. A forgotten history not carved into stone, but buried beneath silence. Long before European settlers arrived in North America, native civilizations built vast cities, governed with democratic systems, and traded across a continent. Their brilliance was erased, not because it didn't exist, but because it disrupted the colonial narrative. We uncovered that buried truth in our video on the lost civilizations of Native America, a story of brilliance, erasure, and voices that refuse to vanish. If this chapter shook your view of the past, that one might just change everything. And if this video made you reconsider what strength really means, leave a comment. I want to hear your take. And if you're hungry for more uncomfortable truths from the past, hit that subscribe button. We dig deep here. Thank you for watching. And remember, history is never just behind us. Sometimes it's waiting inside us.